everybody. You are now tuned into The Blackout, shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture on AfroVibes Radio, the #1 online internet radio station, with your girl, Tequelia. And today's special guest is Houston City Council member, Miss Amanda K. Edwards. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for coming down and being willing to talk to us today. So just to start off, could you please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and being a Houston native?
Absolutely. Again, I'm really, really honored to be here. I'm in a capacity as an elected official. I'm actually one of the at-large Houston City Council members. I assumed this role at the same time as Mayor Turner. We got elected in 2015, and so I've been serving on 3 years, going on 300. and it's been a whirlwind and a lot of fun. I'm a native Houstonian, born and raised. In fact, grew up on the north side of town.
Yes.
I'm a product of Eisenhower High School.
I saw that. I said, oh,
in Alden School District. So yes, anybody out there who's listening or watching, it's certainly a Eisenhower swoop. So went to Eisenhower and then left Houston and went off to Atlanta, where I went to Emory University. Had a fantastic time there. Got really involved. Learned a lot about leadership while I was a student. And in between college and law school, had a chance to work on Capitol Hill, which was a lot of fun. I learned how to run very fast and run around there. And then, of course, went to law school in Boston, went to Harvard, and then came back to the South, not to Houston. Had a detour, went to New Orleans after Katrina, and then came back home and was practicing law. And always knew I was interested in public service, but there's a huge difference from being interested in public service, caring about the community, and running for office. And so made the leap in 2015 because I recognized, it's one thing to be a spectator, it's one thing to have a lot of opinions, and it's another thing to get out there and do something about it. And so the stuff I was really passionate about, we've now gotten a chance to start tackling some of those things. So it's really been an incredible experience.
Amazing. And congratulations on all your accolades.
Oh, thank you.
So just to go back, tell us a little bit about your position and what it all entails as the council member at large in position 4.
Absolutely. So I like to joke and say I have a teeny tiny district known as the entire city of Houston that I represent. So I just got a few constituents, about 2.3 million.
Okay.
And so it's hard on gas and mileage on your car, but it's such a rewarding experience to be able to serve at large because you really get a chance to focus on citywide, longer term issues. Some of them are shorter term, but they're citywide. You know what's happening and you can put your finger on the pulse of various communities, and so having that perspective is a really important aspect to being able to lead an entire community. And so it's a harder race to run. So when I ran for office, people said, why are you doing that? It might be different, a little bit less ground to cover if you picked a district, but in serving in the at-large capacity, I get to work on things like tech and innovation, the city's finances, issues like complete communities, trying to revitalize under-resourced communities alongside those communities. Having them at the table is what that means. And then, of course, really, really trying to make sure that we are promoting policies that make sense for everyone and moving the ball forward. So it's been a blast.
Absolutely. And also, you have a very big heart. You're very compassionate. We can see it through the television. But you care so much about community building and development, which was one of the things I read on your site was inspired by your father, who did have cancer. And what was it about the healthcare system and your father's personal story that evoked that significant change for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I will say, to be very honest with you, when I was young and interested in service, yes, service was a part of it, and I was also born to be a leader in my mind, and it wasn't until I had the experience with watching my father, and I was a teenager for a long period of the time that he was suffering from cancer. So we had more mature conversations than you might when you're a small child. And I remember asking him questions about things like, at the time he had an experimental stem cell treatment. Now that is commonplace with some different forms of cancers, but at the time, and I'd ask questions like, who's paying for all of this stuff? I knew my dad was in the hospital a lot. And what it came to show me when having those dialogues with him, and you know, I said, well, what happens if they say no? Or what happens if, and for me, that meant I might lose my father. Mm-hmm. So suddenly, instead of political life being a situation where it's a game of politics, it really shed light to me that if you're holding a position of public trust, you're an elected official, you are responsible for, in many ways, making policies that affect life and death for people and their families. And so we cannot take lightly, we can't allow public service to be overshadowed by the politics. It's a necessary evil, but that's part of the means to the end goal of service. And so it really kind of shaped the way I think about service, in terms of thinking about, you know, the fact that my father had access to a particular, you know, certain procedures allowed me to be a 17-year-old, you know, have him around up until, you know, homecoming of my junior year of high school. Those are the kinds of things that are going to be pivotal in someone's life. But if they're not afforded those opportunities because the healthcare system doesn't allow for it, or doesn't promote people to have access to coverage and not be underinsured, you know, insurance when you actually need it versus just insurance on paper. Those are the differences that I think we make as elected officials, is being able to think about those outcomes. And so that's what was so pivotal, and I think that was a really important aspect of growth for me just as a person.
And that's amazing that you used that situation and turned it into a positive, because my mother had breast cancer, but gratefully she survived, and she never got cancer again. But for a lot of people, you know, healthcare is a really big thing in America that is on the table for discussion. And I know back then they didn't really want to help my mom. We tried Avon, we tried a lot of other nonprofits. They really didn't want to help her back then. And so I always say, here, let's instill a program that kind of helps us, you know what I mean? And have people that's going to represent that, because we are a large percentage of those people that suffer from breast cancer and heart disease and, you know, all those other different things.
And organizations, I don't know if the Sisters Network was around then, but that's why they have come into fruition, because there was a need to provide support networks.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so why is community service such a large part of your platform?
You know, that's an interesting question, and I cannot remember a time in my life where I wasn't serving others. And I think that was just, and it wasn't hammered home in a way where my family and my parents were saying, you must serve, you must help. I watched by examples. You know, my mom worked at St. Elizabeth Hospital until it closed down in Fifth Ward, and they were providing a lot of a service for low-income communities. I watched so many people around me mentor and help and give back. It was just a way of being, you know, to whom much is given, much is required. And so, you know, I knew I got this Harvard Law degree. That wasn't just for me. That was for me to be able to utilize it so that I can assist other people in reaching their potential or having the type of communities that they deserve to have. And so service to me, you know, politics and being in elected office is great for service, but it can be, you know, people can get lost in it and focus less on the community or less on the service and more on the other stuff. And so, but it's been ingrained since I was a little bitty girl doing service projects, and that's just what you did with your spare time.
Oh, I know.
I don't remember a Saturday that didn't have a service project of some sort. It didn't matter. I was a junior daughter, so I go to St. Monica. So Knights of St. Peter Claver, we had our service projects. And you had your stuff going. You had your full schedule. I don't know how my mom kept up with my service schedule, but we found ways, brownies. Oh,
I understand. My mom was the same way. She was like, "You're going to get some humility today. We're going to help people." I'm like, what? But I was so grateful that she did, because it's like once that's instilled in you at a young age, you want to go help people. And I found that it always made me feel better.
It does. It's like, well, a lot of the times it gives you more than you're giving it. You know, you might go stuff a bag and, you know, but that reward when you see that look on somebody's face or whatever you're doing for them in that moment is so rewarding. So it's something to give. It really is something that is just an opportunity to be fulfilled in a way that is meaningful. So absolutely. But yes, little bitty girl.
Absolutely. And so how do you feel like being able to service others can help benefit the community and individuals as a whole? I
think a couple of things, right? So I think it's important that people have the ability to see people doing that type of work. So much of the time, what is showcased and highlighted is just aspects of popular culture. Nothing wrong with popular culture, but we've got to also model other behaviors of how we empower our communities. How are we equipping our community members with tools so that they have information that they need, so that they can advocate for themselves, so that they can get the services they need, and then how do you encourage them to do the same for their peers? It should be something that grows exponentially if you're doing it right. And so that's a lot of fun, and I appreciate it. I think also letting people know that that's an avenue that you should and can pursue and be successful at it. It doesn't have to just be, the sensationalism that you often hear about of a scandal of this person or that person. Service can actually mean seeing the transformation in a community, and that, we've got to really link together. We are brothers and sisters keepers, and so really demonstrating that with a role like this has been a tremendous responsibility, but also a true joy.
And before we go to commercial break, I have one last question. Yeah. You have served on several major committees. I'm not going to name them all. It was just like a list.
Yeah, I'm probably not on most of those boards anymore because of council. So
yeah, but no, you were though, and that's an amazing thing. So how was it collaborating with those programs and being proactive help you change a lot of public policies now that you've been elected?
I mean, I tell people when they ask me, I've been out of law school for a long time. You can see my gray hair. Others can't see it right now, but I've been out of school for a while, and I've got a lot of people that come to me and they say, "Hey, I'm interested in public service, but I know, I might not do that initially. So what should I be doing?" And I say, "No, that's not really the question you ask in terms of how that's going to lead you into politics. The real question is, what do you feel joy from? What do you feel passionate about? What will you do well when nobody's looking? What will you stay up for late at night to work on?" And work on those things. Follow those pursuits and those passions. And so for me, I did that. I'll use one example. I got to chair the board of directors for Project Row Houses when I was also still practicing as an attorney. That was very difficult in terms of balancing a schedule like that. And I said, listen, I get fuel from this activity. So that means I'll have to work a little bit later on, occasionally, then that's what I'll do, because the reward that you feel from building community. And that was just a really cool experience where, I got to really understand how to cultivate buy-in in a community, hands-on, how to use, we think of, I say we still, I'm not on the board now, but we used to talk about the community being the canvas. And so for us, the art form was actually that transformation that the community was asking for. Yeah. And so that was a cool experience. And just doing stuff like that are unique experiences that help other people. That's what I encourage everybody to try to find that niche, whatever it is. You might be passionate about healthcare. Find that organization that's doing the kinds of healthcare work that really touch your soul. And that's the stuff that I would encourage people to really get involved in. And so, elective office is not for everyone. And there's plenty of ways to get involved. But once you do get involved, you really then become very clear and can understand and appreciate the issues. So, the notion that I understand certain communities in a way that's very deep, it's because I've been out in the community, working with the residents and working on these boards and serving in these ways. So you understand the issues. You don't understand the issues when you're looking at them from a distance.
Very, very true. Mm-hmm. Well, we want to continue our show, but we got to take a quick commercial break. When we return, we will continue our show. Until then, you are listening to The Blackout, where we shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture on AfroVibes Radio with your girl, Tequelia.
Put your bad self. Say it louder. Say it louder.
Hey everybody, we're now back from the commercial break, and you're tuned into The Blackout, where we shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture on AfroVibes Radio, the #1 online internet radio station with your girl Tequelia, and we are still currently in the studio with Councilwoman Amanda Edwards. Thank you so much for giving us the next 15 minutes of your time, because I know that you're busy. So let's just start off and tell us about some of the actions that you've included on your website that you want to improve upon, which was the infrastructure and transportation, strengthening economy and fiscal health, protecting public safety and enhancing the quality of life, and briefly share how each action is necessary and how you plan on executing those.
Absolutely. So a couple things. One of the great responsibilities, I think, of leadership is to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And what I mean by that, I know that sounds silly, but a lot of the time when you get into this space, you see all kinds of crises. You're reacting, you're responding, and you could spend 200% of your time just reacting, just responding. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very difficult for you to balance the response and the appropriate reactions necessary to crises as they arise, but then also balance that with vision for the future. And so I have a great opportunity before me to be able to do both, right? And so focusing our economy, I really want Houston to be the place and known as a center for the future, known as the place or a hub of innovation globally, not just in terms of, oil or energy and gas, the energy sector, but more so for all kinds of innovations from startups. And so I've really started the Mayor's Task Force for Technology and Innovation to try to build that arm of our economy. And so we actually just announced a few months ago, it's not a couple, that we would be having an innovation district come into fruition in the next couple of years, where the old Sears building is where the build out is going to occur in partnership with Rice. So that's a big deal. In terms of looking at innovation, in terms of just thinking about how we're doing some things differently. We have big transportation needs in our city. We've got about 1 million people we're going to add to our multi-county region within the next couple of decades. That's a lot of people that we need to move. So I'm trying very, very vigilantly to push the ball forward. Started a high capacity transit task force that are talking about ways that we can push the envelope, create a system of high capacity transit options, because those things also buttress things like tech and innovation. All of that they are looking at, when they think about the Amazons, where do we want to locate? How is the transportation system? So it has an impact on the kind of economy we're going to have in the future. As it relates to infrastructure, that's a big, big deal right now. And of course, we know with Harvey, we've got a huge amount of investment that's needed for our flood mitigation system, but also our drainage system as well. And so the flood mitigation side is actually under the purview of the county, but that doesn't mean you don't advocate for the type of results that we need. So I've been very active in trying to ensure that we have adequate funding for flood mitigation projects, for the drainage projects that we're going to need to undertake. We've had 3 500-year events, meaning storms and rainfalls in the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. So in theory, I guess we're not supposed to have another one until the next 1,500 years, I guess, if you use that math. But my point is to say we've got to really, bolster up what we call our infrastructure in a variety of ways. And there have been a lot of challenges, and you actually see this nationwide. A lot of our public infrastructure is falling apart. Bridges, you hear about people, their bridges are falling out. And we are just not on the cutting edge right now. We've really got to push and advocate to get resources down to be able to do that. The last piece that you asked about was public safety. And here in Houston, unfortunately, we have a shortfall of law enforcement officers. We talk a lot about things like community policing. Well, guess what? You're not going to have community policing if you don't have an adequately staffed police force. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to figure out the funding mechanisms to put police officers in place so that we can at least meet the minimum threshold of 6,000, which was a minimum threshold that had been recommended by a report. We are at 5,100. Mm-hmm. So we're not even close to where we need to be. Plus, we don't want to just put officers on the street. We need trained officers. We need officers who are equipped to handle split-second decisions in the right way. And that requires ongoing and consistent training. You do not get training for free. It costs money. And so having that, I serve as the vice chair of the budget committee and say on a consistent and regular basis, we can talk all day about what the needs are. The question is, and the policy decision made is where you put your money. And so we've got to put the money in the places. Always follow them. People tell you always follow the money, always follow the dollars in terms of what people are really committed toward, because the things that are getting funded are the things that are coming to fruition, and those that are not will not. And so it is imperative on us to make sure that we're putting in mechanisms in place to make sure we keep our community safe, and that our community works collectively with our law enforcement community. And so we don't have an antagonistic relationship either coming from the law enforcement community or coming from our residents either. So we have to work on putting the resources in place so that that can happen.
And speaking in regards to hurricanes in Houston, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that you had located to New Orleans. And so I wanted to ask you, how did being there actually aid you in the experience of us being affected here in Houston?
Oh, it was unbelievably a situation of coming full circle. When I moved to New Orleans after Katrina, I thought that was going to be kind of a one-off, wonderful experience, but not needing disaster recovery skills ever again in my mind. I did not go to acquire disaster recovery skills so I could bring it back to my city. Yeah. That was not the goal. My goal was to assist because I saw need. I watched it on TV probably just like you did. And I said, I just felt it in my heart. I felt compelled to move after I finished law school. I said, I'm going to go down there, assist in my special way with recovery, and in that way I started a program for kids, teaching them how to use writing as a tool of empowerment post-Katrina. It was a great experience for me. I met a lot of people, learned a lot about Katrina recovery, etc. Left New Orleans. I had a federal clerkship, so I clerked during the week. Had a wonderful judge for whom I worked, and went back home to Houston, started practicing, got into elective office, and Harvey happens. And I'll tell you, it was so unbelievable. I had a policy in my mind, or it was a policy, that every phone call was going to get answered, every text was going to be responded to, every email would be responded to as well. You never know what the need is. It was just one of those things when you get on emergency operation mode, it just clicks on. So I had been hearing from my judge that I worked for in New Orleans many times. We're going to send this, we're going to send that, because I had a lot of friends and relationships I had amassed there, and I think it might have been several times he had contacted me by this point. And I said, yes, Judge, I'm in the middle of working on this stuff, thanks for your support. And he said, I just had a question. I want to help. I want to get y'all some food. I want to connect you to somebody. I said, okay, whatever. And he connects me to someone, and he says, and who then says, who do I need to talk to about getting some food delivered? I had been with the fire department during the storm. It was just a very unreal experience that I had during that experience, and I said, get it to these guys. At that time they hadn't been sleeping. Get it to these folks, bring it into the fire department. And I handed them off to one of the fire chiefs, and I got a call a couple days later from one of the fire chief that I had forgotten all about it. I moved on. We were doing a whole lot of stuff at that time. This was in the throes of the storm, and got a call, and one of the fire chiefs that I had pitched this to says to me, I need you to drive up to see something. I said, see what? I'm over here, struggling at shelters and stuff, trying to help folks. And he said, I need you to see something. And I said, okay. He said, remember that call from the other day? Just stop by. And I said, all right. So I stopped by to this address. I'm thinking I'm going to the fire department and seeing a meal for a couple hundred firefighters. When I got to the site that they asked me to go to, I saw a full parking lot that had been converted into an operations center where they prepared 250,000 meals for first responders and for nonprofits that were delivering services to people. And they were flying them out. I mean, it was unbelievable, all from picking up that call from my judge. So when I say it was like a weird full circle experience, that was an example. The other piece was just understanding the road to recovery is complicated. It's a long road. You still go back to New Orleans, people still talk about Katrina. And the issues that emerged, one of the first things I did after Harvey happened, we went down to New Orleans to talk to some of the experts. What do you want us to know? What were your lessons learned? What should we be mindful of? those kinds of pieces, we knew it was going to be a long road, and we need to equip ourselves with that knowledge. And in having done so, I will tell you, I have been very taken aback about how difficult it has been to get adequate funding for things like case management services. There are so many folks, and immediately after the storm, I went on to check on a few seniors, and I would knock on the door, and they'd say, "Oh, I'm doing okay," and they were happy to see me. I said, "Okay, well, how are you going to clean up your house?" And they'd say, "Oh, my grandchild is going to come and assist with that." "Okay, well, what are you going to do with regard to your walls?" And I'd ask these seniors in this one particular community, and they'd say, "Oh, no, I don't have to do anything with that. Those walls have dried." And I'm telling you, shattered my heart, because I'm saying in my mind at that time, I don't know how many people are believing that.
Yeah.
And so what if all our lower income seniors believe that they don't have to take these walls out of their home? So we developed this canvassing system in which we got hundreds of volunteers mobilized, started going door to door, checking on our seniors, making sure they had information, case management services, and also bringing them goods and things that they needed. Well, what I'm finding now, a year later, many people have stopped answering calls. They feel stuck, and they're embarrassed. They're overwhelmed, and they don't even cry out for help. And so that is a very different experience in terms of what I'm witnessing. So I have been out trying to advocate for the people who are not advocating for themselves, that we aren't out of the woods for a lot of people. There's still a lot of need, and in fact, I'm trying to mobilize some additional efforts to try to make sure we haven't left anybody behind in this process.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned, excuse me, in one of your interviews that as Houstonians, we have a lot of pride. We help amongst each other, so that's probably why people think that it's not as bad as it was.
Oh, and you don't have the visual cues.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's no, like back in New Orleans when Katrina happened, you had that, like, FEMA tic-tac-toe sign. I know that it's not really tic-tac-toe, but, it was like a little square.
Yeah.
And then they, show that they had gone in and searched if there were things like bodies and things like that. We don't have those kinds of visual cues as remnants of what happened that day. We don't have the water lines. I don't know how it is that we don't have a bunch of water lines on people's properties, but we don't. And so you drive down the street, how are you to know, unless you peer behind the walls of the home, what's going on inside? It looks perfectly normal on the outside. You walk in, I have seen all kinds of living conditions of people, and they're embarrassed by it. They let me in because I'm a council member, but they probably won't let the next volunteer in, and even then, so what do I say if I don't have the resources to provide them? We've got to bolster our resources that are available to help these folks with recovery, and also help them to speak out and advocate, because like I said, people become used to and create new normals that you would never imagine, and begin to just, this is what it is.
And do you know of any current resources for people who are still basically battling with the financial means to rebuild?
Yeah, so a lot of, I'll kind of put it into some buckets. You have a number of people who were not insured, may have had some financial means. This was obviously a huge hit on their finances, but they had enough savings that they could figure it out. You have a number of people who are in that circumstances. They may have gotten some limited, FEMA assistance and things like that, Red Cross assistance, but these are minor amounts. And then you have a number of people not insured, but they also don't have the personal savings. So they're relying a lot on nonprofit service delivery. So those organizations that are doing case management, the Habitats for Humanity, the Baker Ripley's, the SVP USA's. I hate that I started naming some because I don't want to miss a number of them that I work with, actually. And so there are extraordinary groups out that are doing this work. But they don't always get to take every case. Sometimes those cases aren't the right fit. I have someone that I'm talking to directly, and in her current circumstance, the house is valued far less than the amount of repair costs. And so you have a number of scenarios that make the math bad for that circumstance. And so how do you assist that person? Also in terms of beyond the nonprofit space, and some people are getting contractors, there's fraud, there are different things that are happening. And so what we really need folks to realize is, there is going to be some recovery dollars that are coming down that are called CDBG dollars for housing repair, housing construction, things like that, but that money is not here yet. probably won't be here until maybe the beginning of the year. So there will be some plans for housing assistance, but not in all ways. And so we need the philanthropists to continue to give. We need them to continue to pour into those nonprofits, as well as to make sure that we're getting people connected to services on a voluntary basis as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming down and just being transparent with
Oh,
us
absolutely.
as a councilwoman, and allowing us to know that there are people who still need assistance from Harvey.
And if you need assistance, please, please, we have so many case management service providers out there, the Avenue CDCs. I mean, there are a number of them. We have a list in my office. You can feel free to call my office at 832-393-3012. That is not a fake number. That is our real number. But don't get stuck and just quit. And that is the message I really want to communicate to people. You are not by yourself. There is assistance for you. There are people who can help walk you through it. It may be a long road, so pack your patience with you, but it is certainly something that can be navigated. And so you just have to have that ability, the information, and willingness to work through those challenges. And so we do have success stories, but you're not going to be a success story if you give up.
And before you get ready to go, just give us your social media website for those who like to connect with you personally.
Absolutely. So I'm on Twitter, Amanda4Houston. That's the number 4. So that's my Twitter handle. Same handle for Instagram. So Amanda4Houston. I've got a Facebook page, Council Member Amanda Edwards, and then I also have my personal page, Amanda K. Edwards.
Well, thank you so much again. And you guys were tuned into The Blackout, where we shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture with your girl Tequelia on AfroVibes Radio. And make sure to check out our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Blackout AVR. And to stay up to date on our previous discussions and future events, please visit AfroVibes Facebook and Instagram at AfroVibes Radio, Twitter at AfroVibes Radio with an S, and lastly, listen to us online at www.afrovibesradio.com, or simply download the AfroVibes Radio app on the Apple or Google Play Store.
Awesome. Thanks so much. This was fun.
Thank you.